if I could get my slides, that would be fabulous. Thank you very much. So if we can move on to the first slide. For those of you on the call that may not be familiar with UK100, we are a network of highly ambitious local leaders. So we work with locally and democratically elected local authority leaders who are all committing to tackling climate change. We have over 80 of our members have committed to delivering net zero by 2030 for their council emissions, and by 2045 for their community-wide emissions. So we undertake a series of key activities facilitating peer-to-peer networking across our members to help them tackle with some of the issues that Eric's outlined about how to implement, how to deliver on those commitments, and also advocating the government to recognise the role that local authorities have to play in the delivery of the net zero strategy, which hopefully will be landing around about the end of the call today if things go to plan. So very excited to have a look at that. I think it's important to note that with the activities that we've undertaken, there is a real need to build the evidence base around what local net zero implementation looks like and to address some of the barriers. So if we can move on to the next slide. In May earlier this year, we released a report called Power Shift. And Power Shift was the most comprehensive examination of the powers that local authorities currently have to deliver net zero, and some of the barriers and challenges that need to be overcome, and some of the additional powers that could be afforded to local authorities that would help them to deliver. Now, within this report, we looked cross-sectorally. So there is a chapter on buildings, one on transport, one on energy, and one on waste. I think that's all of them, if I remember correctly. And across the sectors, one overarching recommendation came from the report, and that was the need for a national to local net zero delivery framework to enable all of the actions that need to be taken to deliver net zero across the board. And so subsequently, from the beginning of the year to now, we've been undertaking another piece of work, if you could move on to the next slide, which looks at exactly what that delivery framework would look like. We have commissioned a team of researchers to investigate frameworks that have successfully delivered across a host of policy areas. We've been consulting with national government representatives, with local authorities, with other various actors that would need to be involved in the delivery of achieving net zero. And I'm very pleased to say that later on this week, we'll be launching the framework research. And if you could move on to the next slide, this is ultimately what has been crafted through various iterations and tweaking of a framework. It's clear that all of the constituent elements within the diagram that you'll see on the screen are necessary in order to ensure that both local authorities gain the additional powers that they need in order to implement on the ground. It was clear from the transport decarbonisation plan that came out earlier this year that across all four of the sectoral focuses in the transport decarbonisation plan, from place shaping to provision of infrastructure, all of those elements have a local authority focus. So it's clear both the National Audit Office and the Committee on Climate Change agree that local delivery is fundamentally important. So we've tried to capture all of the insights from a host of workshops and interviews and interactions with stakeholders to come up with this framework for delivery. And you'll see that there are two constituent elements, both the Net Zero Local Delivery Board, which would be kind of a top level collaboration between national government representatives across the different departments that are relevant, and with local and regional leaders. and a net zero delivery unit, which would provide operational support for the activities of the board. And you'll see here that there are 7 constituent elements of the framework. So they need to capture and understand finance mechanisms, be clear that the roles and responsibilities, and I think this is one of the most fundamental pieces when we consider some of the challenges around decision making, is that actually allocating roles and responsibilities for delivery is going to be absolutely key to ensuring that the expertise is both developed within local authorities, but also within national government departments, and to ensure that skills building, reskilling, upskilling is all taking place, because we hear time and again from our membership that there is a lack of in-house capacity and in-house skills to deliver on some of these new policy areas that haven't needed to be considered previously. There needs to be a two-way relationship, and that means that local authorities need to go in with an agreed commitment to deliver on the net zero plans that they implement. And again, a fundamental element, and something that is brought up time and time again, is the need for iteration. So oftentimes we talk about best practice. We don't very often talk about bad practice, worst practice, trying things out that haven't worked, that have failed, and learning from them. And so this feedback system for continuous improvement is actually, I think, in decision-making terms, one of the most important elements of the net zero delivery framework. Accessible and shared information and data is also extremely important. And if I could move on to the next slide, I'll just talk very briefly in the time I have left about a couple of other pieces of research that will also be coming out that facilitate and develop further the evidence base for local authority implementation of net zero. We conducted a piece of research looking at the influence and control that local authorities have over particular emission sources. And it was extremely clear, with the exception of the Scottish context, whereby Scottish local authorities have had to have been mandated to report their emissions for the past 5 years. In other areas across the other devolved administrations across the UK, it's very clear that many local authorities don't currently record their emissions. So we undertook a study looking at all of the local authorities across the UK, and in fact 40% of local authorities are not reporting. And one of the key issues around reporting is the lack of common reporting guidance. So I just want to emphasize that point 8 in the framework, the shared data and shared information. There's a real need for local authorities to have that guidance that is consistent, that sets common boundaries for emissions across the UK. And so one of the key recommendations from this report, which will also be coming out this week, is again the need for improved reporting, the sharing of best and worst and bad practice, and also for more training and development for local authorities. And finally, the third report that we have coming out ahead of COP is concerned with making the economic case for local authority action. And there are a number of different economic benefits that have been uncovered through the conduction of this synthesis report. But I just wanted to flag here that in terms of job creation and skilling, not just within local authorities, but within local communities, it's very clear that local authorities, local partnerships are fundamentally important. And there's a real opportunity to capitalise on some of the opportunities that present themselves. And I'm really keen to participate in the conversation further today around decision making, to try and work out the best ways, the best factors that we can utilise in order to maximise that potential. So thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing some questions in the panel discussion.
It's fantastic. Thanks very much, Karen, and we look forward to seeing those reports. I think they'll be very interesting and should be well received, because they're addressing really important questions. I think one of the points you made that I did pick up on was the one about iteration, and I completely agree with you. I think one of the challenges that we face with decision making is being concerned that we have to make the perfect decision the first time, and I think there's something to be considered here, where you make the best possible decision that you can, and you do some experimentation, you do some monitoring and explicit measurement to understand what you've achieved with that decision, and then iterate and improve in an incremental way based upon real feedback. So I think there's definitely an important message there in terms of good decision making practice. It doesn't need to be perfect on day one.